Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Chris here. So in today's video I thought we'd break down some of my favorite MIDI controllers for Ableton. Let's get into it. So what exactly do I look for in a MIDI controller, particularly for Ableton? Because MIDI controllers do a bunch of universal things. You can pretty much use them across the board, depending, whatever software you're using, they usually work about the same. Obviously, different MIDI controllers can offer you different features. In this case, because I am primarily based around Ableton, I do look for controllers that work the best for that. These are quite universal and you can use them on Logic, FL Studio, whatever, but they do offer features that primarily only work in Ableton. We'll break it down and I'll show you some of my favorite features and why I've opted for these tools. So to get us started, I'm going to talk about this. This is the Novation SL Mark III. It's my go-to MIDI keyboard. I've run through a couple in the past decade or so, and this has been the one that I've really stuck with because it's offered everything that I look for in a MIDI controller: playability, control, tweaking of MIDI capability, and it's just really good fun. I can use it on my synths and stuff that I've got there, so it offers me a real lot of control in that aspect. But just to break it down, things I like about it: first of all, the playability. Plays really nice. It's got a great action, which I really enjoy as a piano player. It's very light, but it's got enough push that I can feel really comfortable playing piano sounds on it, which is great. So on the side here, you've got your main MIDI controls. You've got transpose by either a note or an octave. You've got your pitch and mod, which is really great. But then here you've got a couple different options, which I really enjoy, which are, you've got an arpeggiator, you've got scales, you've got a sequencer, and then zones. The arpeggiator is pretty straightforward. You turn it on and you can latch that. Very nice. Scales, so you can go in, you can turn it on, and as you can see, all the colors shift. And over here, if you click on it, you can actually pick certain scales. And you have the option to either snap the note. So as you can see, any of the ones that aren't lit, it's not going to play those. It's only going to shift that note to the ones that are highlighted. Or I have the option up here to change it to filter, which it doesn't actually play any of the wrong notes, or you can just leave it to display only. So you can play all the notes, but then only the ones that are in the scale are highlighted, which is really lovely. My favorite section, the sequencer. This is quite a large sequencer. I believe it's 16 steps. You have the option to either sequence individual notes or sequence chords. Go in and clear that, or I can put in just individual notes. And I can go in and actually pick how long I want the pattern to be. If I only want it to be those 8 steps, I can change the end position to pick how many of those steps I wanted to play. And then my favorite feature of all this is I can change the direction. You go forward, backwards, ping pong, random. Random is my favorite. And on top of that, you even have things like chants, where you can pick, if I hold shift, I can pick the chants for all the steps. If I turn that back, it's now got a 70% chance of playing any of those, so it's not going to just run through them all at the 16th note rate. It starts chopping out some of those notes, which is really nice. And then you also have things like the gate and the velocity, so how long those notes are held for and the level at which they are played. Super convenient, clear that all out. And then lastly, you've got zones. Now what zones is I find it really fascinating because it's part of this MIDI workflow that this controller has, which is the fact that you can control other instruments outside of this. It's got a bunch of outputs in the back of the keyboard. So I've got 2 MIDI cables running into my Micro Korg and my Yamaha CS. And what that allows is that over here I've got the CS and the Micro Korg patched in. I've also got an MPC when I'm using that. But what's really nice is, I'll turn the zones off. You can see what it does when all the zones are on. I can split different MIDI channels across the keyboard. So I could have the CS here, and I can have the Micro Korg up here or down here or whatever. So in this case, I've got channel 1 is the computer MIDI, and then channel 2 is the reface, and then channel 3 is the microKORG. You can't actually hear it because I've got it patched into a different output right now, but it's definitely coming through. And so it's really nice. I have the option to either have them all in one place, or if I turn that off, I can just go in here and select a different MIDI output as I please, which makes it really convenient. I've even mapped here, it might be a bit hard to read, but I've mapped the different MIDI controls on both the microKORG and the reface. So that allows me, I don't even need to reach over unless I want to change a preset. You know, I can just click on whatever, but I've got all the control from here, and that makes it super convenient. So those are just things outside of Ableton, which you can do pretty much across the board on any software. But then where it gets more convenient for the Ableton sake is it's got this in control button, and then here we start to have access to the actual session. So if I open up the mixer, for example, you can see here I've got my groups that I've set up, and if I move the faders, you can see I can actually change the volume of any of those tracks that are selected. Gives me quick access to that. The transport controls work now, so I can play, I can stop, I can record, do all that stuff here. I can also solo and mute, things like that, very convenient. And I've also got these 8 encoders, these 8 knobs right at the top. And what's really cool about that is, say I chuck a plugin on here, I'll get one of the Ableton ones, such as Drum Bus. Now all of the controls pop up here, and I can just change them as I wish, keeping it all, you know, keeping my hands off the computer basically, which is really nice. I can work entirely off this. You've got your pages here to flick through all the different options of the plugin. And whenever you can see this little blue hand on the plugin, that means that I'm currently looking at that on the screen and I can control it further. So if I go on the reverb module, so now the blue hand is on there, and I've got all of the reverb controls, which makes it really convenient. Also, if I press shift, it gives me a couple extra features. Undo, redo, I can turn the click off and on, and then capture, which is my favorite Ableton feature, where you can capture MIDI after you've been playing through it and you haven't recorded. So say right now I've got Ableton playing. I'll make sure I've got my Ableton main piano, my main MIDI channel selected. And so Ableton is just running in the background. I can do. And if I press in Control Shift Capture, boom. If I go into, there you go. Can see that's just recorded there, which is really nice. So, you know, it gives me a lot of this quick control of Ableton externally, which is really convenient for my workflow. I really enjoy that. Last but not least, if I open up one of these groups, so I'll pick a different patch for this, say the Juno. You can see these have lit up, and that basically means that I can now record in the session view window. So if I do this, and I'm gonna have to turn on the click, so make sure that's on, I can go. And I've got that playing there, which is really nice. And you can obviously build down the layers. I can trigger full tracks. I can go up and down as I please. And if I click on these, it even changes what instrument is armed, which is quite nice. So I can go into the Triton or Omnisphere. So again, it's just making the process a lot quicker for my workflow. And that's personally why I would say this keyboard for me is the best MIDI controller for Ableton, just because it has everything in one. Obviously the keys is the main factor for it. I've got a sustain pedal plugged in, so I can truly express my piano playing as I'd like. Now bear in mind, this whole video I've also had the Ableton Push sat beside me. That for me is also a really convenient controller that I equally spend a lot of time playing on, but I find it has a different purpose to where this I'm playing piano mainly and keys and different kind of stuff. I find on this I'm doing a lot of drum programming, MIDI automation, whether that's on plugins or whatever, and building sequences, or using it mainly in the session view here because it just makes it really easy to view everything. I can have my loops set up there, and I can be triggering it all from there. I can be playing on here, and it all works in tandem. They all work together. So if I change a track here, it changes up there, which is really nice. One thing that I wish this had that it doesn't is a tempo for Ableton. It's actually got a tempo here, but this tempo is internal for this keyboard. So if I was doing sequencing or arpeggiation, I would set the tempo here and then I'd have to set it in there. Whereas on the push, I've got here a little tempo that is internal for Ableton, which makes it really convenient to speed up or slow down the track. And what's nice about that is it's like a notched encoder. So each like little bump that the encoder does is a BPM. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the best MIDI controller that I believe is for Ableton. If you want a deeper dive on the push, I've done a couple of videos already, but I might do one specifically on creating music with the push, but I'll link those above so you can check those out. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to let us know in the comment section below. I really appreciate all the comments people are leaving. It's really good support, and thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And once again, I've been Vella, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.